Have you ever noticed a strange phenomenon? Nations around the world will fight bitterly over resources, territory, or even a tiny island. Yet, when faced with Antarctica, a landmass larger than Europe, they are remarkably unanimous. Why is Antarctica the last true piece of land on Earth, belonging to no country? This frozen world, 1.5 times the size of Europe, is buried under ice sheets kilometers thick. Winter temperatures plunge below -80 degrees Celsius, with no sunlight for half the year. There are no cities here, no highways, and no permanent residents. There is only ice, rock, dead silence, and a few scattered coastal research stations looking like tiny dots on a white map. Officially, Antarctica belongs to science and peace. In 1959, 12 nations signed the Antarctic Treaty, banning military activities, mineral extraction, and new territorial claims. It sounds noble. At the time, the US and the Soviet Union were locked in a tense Cold War. Yet, they suddenly sat down together and peacefully agreed to jointly manage a continent of penguins and ice. But think about it. Why did the world's 12 most powerful nations reach an agreement on Antarctica so fast and so unanimously? Officially, the region holds almost no strategic value. But if so, why the immense urgency? In 1959, Washington and Moscow could not agree on nuclear disarmament, the space race, or Berlin. Yet on Antarctica, there was zero dispute. In just months, the deal was settled. Is that not strange? Usually, when every major power goes unusually silent about the exact same thing, people naturally suspect there is something they do not want the world to know. And in Antarctica, that silence runs deep. Today we look at 6 mysteries of Earth's most enigmatic continent. These phenomena were all discovered, measured, and documented, yet rarely discussed in public. The first mystery is Lake Vostok, hidden deep beneath the Antarctic ice. Roughly 4 kilometers below the surface lies a colossal freshwater lake. It stretches about 250 kilometers long and 50 kilometers wide, making its surface area larger than some of Europe's biggest lakes. Even more mind-boggling is that it has been completely sealed off from the outside world for at least 15 million years. 15 million years ago, when this lake last saw sunlight, humanity did not exist. Even our earliest hominid ancestors had not walked the Earth yet. The planet was a radically different place. Back in the 20th century, Soviet scientists using airborne radar detected a massive structural anomaly beneath the ice near Vostok Station. Later satellite radar scans finally confirmed it. Trapped beneath the thick ice sheet was a gigantic subterranean lake. The news sent shockwaves through the scientific community. What exactly was swimming inside a massive lake, sealed off for 15 million years? Did it hold life forms never before seen by science? Could there be an entire independent ecosystem down there, evolving in total darkness for millions of years? A global scientific race kicked off, with rival teams vying to be the first to drill through the ice and reach the water. Russian scientists had been drilling since the Soviet era. At Vostok Station, temperatures once hit -89 degrees Celsius, which remains the coldest natural temperature ever recorded on Earth. Inch by inch, the drill bit pushed downward. Finally, in 2012, after decades of grueling work, it pierced the lake's surface. The whole world waited for the lab results. But this is where things got genuinely suspicious. The official reports released by the authorities were bizarrely guarded, published in slow and delayed batches. Their final conclusion amounted to just a single sentence: bacteria were found in the samples. Aside from that, total silence. No groundbreaking discoveries, no alien organisms, just ordinary microbes. However, insiders close to the project told a very different story. Unverified leaks suggested the samples contained DNA sequences that could not be matched to any known branch of life. They were not bacteria, they were not archaea, and they were not viruses. It was genetic code entirely absent from global scientific databases. One microbiologist involved in the project privately disclosed to a journalist that researchers were instructed to withhold certain findings. Who gave the order, and why they did it, was never explained. Meanwhile, an American team drilling into another subglacial body of water, Lake Wilkes, also discovered signs of life. Yet their public descriptions of the data were just as carefully filtered. So what is really down there in Lake Vostok? Just standard bacteria, or an exotic form of life that survived 15 million years in pitch blackness? The scientific mainstream remains quiet, and governments refuse to comment. Even stranger, That multi-million-dollar drilling project, decades in the making, practically ground to a halt right after breaching the water, almost as if someone decided it was safer to stop digging. The second mystery is the Wilkes Land gravity anomaly. In 2006, NASA satellites mapping Earth's gravitational field detected a massive gravitational irregularity in the Wilkes Land region of Antarctica. Roughly 500 kilometers in diameter, this zone showed a sharp spike in gravitational density compared to the surrounding terrain. Buried miles beneath the ice sheet sits an object of incomprehensible mass, and it has been sitting there for a very long time. The mainstream scientific consensus suggests it is the remains of a titanic asteroid impact crater. Roughly 250 million years ago, at the end of the Permian period, a monster asteroid slammed into Earth. If this hypothesis holds true, it would be the largest known impact crater on the planet, roughly 4 to 5 times wider than the Chicxulub crater that wiped out the dinosaurs. Some researchers even theorize this exact impact triggered the Great Dying, the mass extinction event that erased 96% of all marine species. It sounds neat and tidy. One giant space rock explains the worst biological catastrophe in Earth's history. But there is a catch. No human being has ever actually laid eyes on this crater. It is locked beneath miles of solid ice. Every single deduction relies purely on gravity math, and mathematical data can be interpreted in more ways than one. Several geophysicists have pointed out that the geometry of the anomaly does not behave like a typical impact zone. It is far too symmetrical and geometrically regular. When a massive asteroid strikes a planet, it leaves a jagged, fractured, chaotic scar surrounded by ejected debris. Yet the Wilkes Land anomaly forms an almost mathematically perfect circle. One geophysicist, speaking on the condition of anonymity, noted in an interview that the structure looks less like an impact scar and more like something that was constructed. Granted, that sounds like pure science fiction. But until someone actually drills down to the bedrock, nobody knows what is really down there. Every theory remains an educated guess. What is truly puzzling is that despite possessing the drilling technology and knowing the monumental scientific value of the site, no major space agency or government has launched a serious campaign to bore into it. The third enigma is Antarctica's infamous Blood Falls. Located in the McMurdo Dry Valleys, this is one of the most alien landscapes on the continent. There is no ice cover here, no snowpack, just bare, barren rock and howling gale force winds. Right in the middle of this desolate valley, a stream of crimson liquid continuously pours out of the Taylor Glacier. From a distance, it looks like the glacier is bleeding. Brilliant white ice, dark gray stone, a lifeless void, and a river of bright red blood. It looks like a still frame from a horror movie. When explorers first stumbled upon it in 1911, they were baffled. Initially, they assumed the coloration was caused by red algae. Later theories pointed to mineral deposits. It was not until modern laboratory analysis that scientists realized the truth was far stranger than fiction. The official explanation states that trapped beneath the glacier is an ancient hypersaline lake dating back roughly 2 million years. The water is heavily saturated with iron. When this brine seeps out of the ice and hits the oxygen in the atmosphere, the iron instantly oxidizes, turning a rust-red color. What shocked biologists, however, was that the microbes living inside this brine thrive entirely on iron. They survive with zero sunlight and zero oxygen, generating metabolic energy through a complex chemical dance between iron and sulfur. That discovery alone was fascinating enough for the mainstream press to declare the mystery solved. But the real bombshell came in subsequent follow-up studies. Researchers analyzing the water samples discovered microorganisms possessing a metabolic system that defies classical biology. Not only do they thrive in a completely anaerobic environment, but they execute chemical reactions previously deemed impossible for organic life. These microbes can dynamically toggle their metabolic gears, flipping between oxidizing and reducing iron on the fly, depending on environmental shifts. One microbiologist remarked that these organisms effectively rewrote the biochemistry textbooks, pulling off biological processes that should not happen in the real world. Even more provocative is that their subterranean habitat mirrors the theoretical conditions found in the subsurface oceans of Jupiter's moon Europa, or the deep brines of Mars. Freezing, pressurized, hypersaline, oxygen-deprived, and iron-rich. If complex extremophiles can flourish in the pitch-black freezer of Antarctica, Why could they not exist beneath the ice of an alien world? This is not wild armchair speculation. It is an astrobiological working model built on hard data. Many researchers argue this is the real reason blood falls draws such intense scrutiny. It is not just biologists taking notes. NASA and elite aerospace labs have been quietly monitoring the site for decades. Some speculate that certain data sets have been intentionally held back. Because if science definitively proves that subglacial oceans inevitably breed life, the philosophical fallout would transcend academia. It would fundamentally force us to rewrite our understanding of human origins, theology, and our place in the cosmos. Of course, this remains a fringe hypothesis, as concrete evidence confirming this leap has yet to be declassified. The fourth mystery is the Antarctic pyramids. In 2016, a set of satellite images went viral across the internet. The photos showed several distinct mountain peaks jutting out of the ice sheet that looked suspiciously like classical pyramids. 4 sharp faces, distinct apexes, and remarkably symmetrical geometry left millions of viewers stunned. Captured in the Ellsworth Mountains, the images sparked an immediate global sensation. Amateur sleuths zoomed in, calculated angles, and placed them side by side with the Great Pyramid of Giza. The structural resemblance was undeniable. Faced with mounting public speculation, geologists stepped in with a textbook explanation. They stated that these so-called Antarctic pyramids are simply nunataks. A nunatak is a rocky peak formed when a glacier slowly erodes a mountain over immense periods of time. Through wind, ice, and freezing temperatures over millions of years, the rock is carved into a sharp pyramidal geometry. This happens all over the world. The famous Matterhorn in the Swiss Alps shares this exact silhouette. Once mainstream science issued this ruling, the debate officially closed. Anyone discussing Antarctic pyramids today is quickly branded a conspiracy theorist. Yet not everyone buys the textbook answer. Independent researchers point to several geometric anomalies. First is the uncanny flatness of the slopes. Natural erosion can certainly shape a mountain into a pyramid, but it rarely weathers all 4 faces equally. Because prevailing winds blow from consistent directions over millennia, one side of a natural peak is almost always far rougher than the others. Yet satellite scans show the pitch and length of these slopes are suspiciously uniform. The symmetry is staggering. Second is their orientation. Measurements indicate that one of the structures aligns almost perfectly with the cardinal directions, off by less than 2 degrees. Granted, satellite photos alone prove nothing, as nature occasionally produces geometric flukes. The third detail is even stranger. Public records show a private research team attempted to organize an expedition to the site, only to have their permits denied with zero explanation. Now, to be fair, Antarctica is not a forbidden continent. Thousands of tourists visit the peninsula every year to photograph penguins, and international research bases operate year-round. Authorities restrict certain zones purely due to environmental protection, hidden crevasses, or extreme weather. Being barred from a location does not automatically prove it conceals a secret. Yet it is quite a coincidence that the exact coordinates housing these pyramid-like peaks sit squarely inside a restricted zone. Whether it is standard safety protocol or something else remains an open question. The fifth mystery is Operation Highjump. This remains the most controversial and fiercely debated military deployment in Antarctic history. In 1946, just 1 year after World War II, Europe was still in ruins, and the United States was starting peacetime reconstruction. Yet right in this post-war reset, U.S. Navy Admiral Richard E. Byrd led an unprecedented military armada to Antarctica. Officially designated Operation Highjump, its scale dwarfed any standard scientific expedition. The Naval Task Force fielded 13 ships, including an aircraft carrier, 23 planes, and over 4,000 combat troops, Marines, and pilots. This did not look like a team of geologists. It looked like an invasion force. According to official history, Antarctica held nothing back then, except ice and penguins. Why did the Pentagon deploy a combat fleet? The official justification claimed the military needed to test polar warfare equipment while mapping the coastline. Viewed through the early Cold War lens, that holds water. Moscow was rising, and Washington wanted its troops acclimated to sub-zero battlefields. Yet historical discrepancies refused to line up. Scheduled to last 6 to 8 months, the entire armada abruptly packed up and retreated to the United States after barely 8 weeks. Official records blamed severe weather. But the deployment occurred during the Antarctic summer, the mildest window of the year for polar operations. What really forced a heavily armed fleet into a rushed retreat? Even more provocative were Admiral Byrd's statements upon his return. According to a 1947 interview published in a Chilean newspaper, Byrd warned that the United States needed to prepare for hostile aircraft capable of flying from pole to pole at incredible speeds. He stressed that Antarctica represented an emerging national security threat. Coming from a decorated fleet admiral, those words carried immense weight. Skeptics argue he was merely predicting intercontinental flight. But what did he actually encounter to prompt such urgent language? There is another overlooked detail. Multiple aircraft crashed during the operation, resulting in several fatalities. The Navy wrote them off as routine weather accidents. Yet surviving veterans later claimed the crash circumstances differed from the official logs. Meanwhile, the vast majority of Highjump's operational files remain classified. While some documents were released, many pages are heavily redacted. Authorities claim this is standard procedure for legacy archives. Perhaps, but that secrecy is precisely why the theories never die. The sixth mystery is the thermal anomaly zone beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. In 2018, satellites carrying thermal infrared detection equipment recorded an abnormally high temperature zone in the East Antarctica region. In the coldest place on Earth, an area significantly warmer than the surrounding rock layers unexpectedly appeared beneath the ice sheet, and its area reached dozens of square kilometers. The official scientific community believes that this phenomenon is very likely related to subterranean volcanic activity. It has currently been confirmed that at least over 100 volcanoes are hidden beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, some of which still possess active capabilities. Subterranean magma heats the rock layers, which then transfer heat to the ice sheet, so satellites can naturally detect the temperature anomaly. It sounds like everything can be explained. But some people have also put forward different viewpoints, because the location of this thermal anomaly zone does not correspond to any known volcano, and the nearest subglacial volcano is hundreds of kilometers away. What is even stranger is that the shape of this thermal zone does not diffuse in a circular pattern like an ordinary volcanic heat source. On the contrary, it is closer to an elongated shape, and its boundaries are relatively clear. There is another point that sparked discussion. The temperature of this area remains stable over the long term, almost unaffected by seasonal shifts, day-night cycles, or changes in solar activity. By comparison, volcanic activity usually fluctuates alongside the strength or weakness of subterranean activity, yet the heat source here appears unusually constant. Relevant satellite data was once made public, but not long after, some high-resolution images disappeared from the database. Although they were later put back online, they turned into lower-resolution versions, and many details could no longer be recognized. Official explanations stated that this was a technical adjustment during the database upgrade process. Perhaps it really was just a coincidence. But coincidentally, right around the same period, some researchers discovered that isolated areas on the Antarctic map had undergone blurring treatment, while others were covered with regular white layers, as if they were later artificially superimposed onto the original imagery. The official explanation for this is because polar regions have a low angle of solar irradiation, coupled with intense ice and snow reflection, satellite imaging inherently holds a certain level of difficulty. This statement indeed has scientific backing. Polar regions have always been one of the most difficult areas for remote sensing imaging. But some people also raised questions. If it is merely poor imaging conditions, why are only isolated locations blurred, rather than the entire Antarctica? Why can the surrounding areas be clearly displayed, while only a few specific coordinates cannot be recognized? A practitioner who has long been engaged in commercial satellite imagery analysis revealed on a podcast program that before satellite imagery is made public, certain special coordinates are processed according to regulations. According to his introduction, such coordinates usually involve military facilities, sensitive bases, and other areas, which also include certain locations in Antarctica. However, because he signed a confidentiality agreement, he did not disclose the specific coordinate locations. Of course, this statement currently cannot be independently verified, but it also caused the outside world to generate more speculations. On this continent officially claimed to have no permanent residents, no military bases, and only ice and snow and penguins. If areas requiring special treatment really do exist, then what exactly is the reason? Regarding this, People have put forward various different interpretations. Some people think it might be secret facilities left behind from the Cold War period. Some guess that future strategic resources are hidden there, such as oil, natural gas, or rare minerals. Others have put forward even more imaginative speculations. However, these viewpoints currently all lack reliable evidence to support them. What is truly worth pondering is not any single mystery itself, but a wonderful coincidence formed when these events are put together. A subterranean lake, sealed by ice for 15 million years. Its public information became extremely limited after the first sampling. A massive gravity anomaly zone has not undergone deep drilling verification to this day. A special microorganism living in blood falls refreshed human understanding of extreme life. Several mountain peaks, shaped like pyramids, continue to trigger external discussion. An unprecedented military expedition ended ahead of schedule, leaving many details that remain not fully declassified to this day. And there is also that abnormal thermal zone, as well as the areas where high-definition imagery was once difficult to obtain. Looked at individually, a reasonable explanation can be found for every single thing. The subterranean lake is just an ordinary subglacial lake. The gravity anomaly might just be an ancient crater. The pyramidal peaks are just sharp peaks formed by glacial erosion. General Byrd's words might also just be personal viewpoints. The thermal anomaly zone is perhaps just subterranean volcanic activity, and map imagery changes might also just be technical adjustments. Every explanation conforms to existing scientific understanding. But when all these stories appear on the same continent at the same time, people inevitably generate more curiosity. Antarctica is the only continent on Earth without permanent residents, and also the only continent jointly managed by international treaties rather than belonging to any single nation. There are too many unsolved mysteries here. And beneath the ice sheet, several kilometers thick, what on earth is still buried? Perhaps only when the ice and snow continue to melt and human exploration continues to deepen will these questions gradually receive their answers. Until then, they will still quietly sleep in extreme cold, darkness, and silence. And as we stand at the edge of this white abyss, looking down into the dark, I think Antarctica offers us something far more valuable than just unanswered questions. It offers us a lesson in profound humility. In the 21st century, we live with the comforting illusion that we have conquered this planet. We open up our smartphones, look at high-definition satellite maps, and assume that every inch of Earth has been charted, categorized, and tamed. Yet right at the bottom of our globe sits a frozen mass larger than Europe, quietly reminding us that we are still just beginners in the grand story of the cosmos. True science has never been about stubbornly defending what we already know. It has always been about having the courage to stand in front of the unknown and whisper, "I don't know yet." But now, I want to turn the spotlight over to you. What do you make of everything we explored today? Do you lean toward the safe, textbook explanations of mainstream geology, or do you feel in your gut that there is a much bigger, hidden reality locked beneath that ice? Real or fake, fact or fiction? Please keep in mind that everything presented in this video is just my personal synthesis and analysis. I am sitting here putting the puzzle pieces together, which means I could be entirely right or I could be dead wrong. That is the beauty of open inquiry, and it is exactly why I created TIAN Science. I do not want to preach to you, I want to think with you. So drop your honest thoughts down below, let us debate it out. And while you are typing away, do me one quick favor. Antarctica is the only continent on Earth that belongs to no single nation, which makes it belong to all of us. So tell me, where on this spinning blue planet are you watching this video from today? I will be hanging out down there ready to reply to as many of you as I can. Thank you so much for exploring with me today. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the comments.